What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Iron Infidel. Today we're going to dive back into holsters and duty belts, battle belts, whatever you want to call them. Something that you could use for law enforcement, security, you're in the military, maybe a little bit of fun out on the range, or even that hard LARP lifestyle if you're into the airsoft thing. All this stuff is going to be very applicable to all of those, whether it's for fun or for actual work. Now, there are so many brands out there that it's just really difficult to keep up with all of them. There are US made ones, there are imported ones. Whatever decision you make there is completely up to you, but I'm going to go over some of the brands that I have and I trust, along with kind of things to look for and some things to avoid, both when it comes to belts and to like retention holsters. We're not talking about a Kydex no retention. We're talking about locking duty style holsters, so a bad guy could not rip your gun easily out of a holster if it's friction fit only.
Man.
So what do you actually want to look for in a belt? And the first thing you should honestly think about is don't dehydrate on the range. That's why we got the battle bottles right here. Everything you could possibly need in a hydro flask, carry handle, cell phone pocket, key holder. We got the small ones like that. We got the big ones, and we've got the new kind of cup style designs as well if you're into that. We got the dagger and knot blades, fitness gear, all the good stuff you could need at ironinfidel.com. We all pretty much know what belts are for. They keep your pants up, right? But they're also very good at holding gear like holsters, magazine pouches, medical kits, all the good stuff you're going to want to carry with you. Now, I prefer an 1 3/4, 1.75 belt. There are some 2-inch belts that are okay, but I don't like traditional leather, massive patrol style belts, I guess you could say, which is what a lot of agencies issue. In my opinion, they just kind of suck. So when it comes to a modern battle belt or molly belt, 1 3/4 and 2 are my preferred, something like maybe sub-second gear, HSGI. There's some good ones from HRT, AWS gear, Ronin, and a ton of others. Again, we're not getting brand specific on each one, just kind of things to overall look for. A big thing when it comes to 1 3/4 versus 2-inch style molly belts is how much movement you're actually going to have in your pouches up and down. Sometimes, depending on how your pouches go on that belt, you might have a little bit more upward and downward movement if you don't have the ability to like weave the malice clips or whatever retention style stuff is behind that pouch to make it a little bit tighter. And then if you have a belt slide style holster, it's just gonna move all around the belt. Hence why I like molly belts, because it's extremely firm. Those items and holsters are kept on there with those molly attachments, and they're not going to move around your belt if you're in a struggle or train in. Where you get caught on gear coming out of the Bearcat or your car. They're gonna stay right there. So that's obviously a huge positive when it comes to a molly style belt. Now, if you like belt slides, you can use those too. Just be aware that if you don't have keepers on that belt, that's gonna lock it in. Those things have a tendency to move around, and when you go for a magazine exchange, you might not get it right because your holster's moved clear over here for your magazines. When it comes to belt materials, there's a ton of different materials out there. There's also blends of materials. Generally, you are going to want to look for a high strength weaved nylon, probably doubled up. That's going to give you a lot of stiffness and rigidity in those belts. You can also have scuba webbing belts. That stuff is extremely strong and stiff, but there's a lot of blended belts now where it's half nylon, internal Tegris, or some kind of polycarbonate. And then there's actual belts like the HRT that is completely polycarbonate or Tegris on the inside, and it has pouches from molly on the outside that stay in place that you add onto it, making it probably one of the lightest belts out there in the industry. When it comes to your belt buckle style or the clasp, whatever you're using, you got G-hooks, you got Cobra buckles, you got the old school Barney Fife patrol belt that just wraps over and hooks in, which are my least favorite belts of all, because they just add girth to you and they generally don't allow you to put your pouches where you want them. I am a huge fan of Cobra buckles because they're just stupid easy. It's really difficult to mess those things up. That's what they use in skydiving gear. They're extremely strong and they're pretty durable, and they're actually not too expensive when they come on a battle belt. Now, if you like the G-hook setup, those are good too. Just remember, it's not as easy to get off and on as a Cobra buckle. Now, whether you get a D-ring or don't get a D-ring is completely up to you. If you're snapping into helos and you got to link into something, those are a great option. If you don't do anything like that, you're just kind of taking up some of that space in front of you, where for a duty belt, I prefer that little bit of extra MOLLE from magazines or tourniquet attachments, something you can have right in the front of it you may need to get to very quickly. When it comes to a lot of the major brands out there like AWS Gear, HRT, Blue Alpha, Ronin, HSGI, Lead Devil, and many others, a lot of those are going to be either US made, and some of them are going to be Berry compliant, which means all the materials are actually US sourced. Generally, when you buy a Berry compliant or a nicer US made belt, you're getting a lot of quality built into it. You're going to get a little bit better stitching, maybe a little bit better material. And of course, if you want like the patterns of camo of your choice, those are going to need to be licensed. So that is a big expenditure as well, where if you don't care about, multicam or something like that, you can save a little bit of coin with just a black or coyote or just a solid colored belt. So what do we want to avoid when it comes to choosing a duty belt? The first thing I'm going to say is your old leather or cop style duty belt from the 20s, 30s, or 40s, that wraparound style. I avoid those just completely. They take up a lot of additional space just based on the way they wrap around. They add to your width. They don't allow you to put pouches where you want them, and you just don't seem to be able to fit them appropriately. They always seem to either be just a little bit too loose or just a little bit too tight as compared to an adjustable like Cobra buckle MOLLE style belt. This next one's gonna sting, right? Because it comes to cost. Some of these belts here, it's $150 to $190 just for the belt. And then when it comes to your pouches, you're talking 20, 30 bucks a piece. A med kit, maybe another 100, 120. These things can get $500 or $600 expensive. You add that holster on there, that's 100 to 150 bucks as well. So this kind of hurts, but avoid the Amazon special, right? Because a lot of times that price point of 30, 40 bucks may seem really great, but generally you're not going to get the same quality. You're not going to get the same quality of material, the stitching, or any of that. And in time, they just seem to wear down, break faster. And a lot of times you will get like knockoff Cobra buckles, right? If you're going to trust a Cobra buckle, think Austria Alpine. They have a huge following in the skydiving and tactical belt industry because those things are so well proven, they work, and they just seem to be able to be beaten to death and still work past all of it. You can literally hit the things with a hammer and they're still gonna go. The next thing to look for is your actual sizing of the belt. When it comes to a MOLLE belt where everything attaches on that external MOLLE, you only have to account for the size of the inner belt you are wearing. That's gonna add a little bit of girth to it. When it comes to wraparound belts, you really need to plan for a little bit of extra space. And when it comes to belt slide options, if you don't want to use the MOLLE, that's going to take up a larger amount of space around your waist because it adds space in between your inner belt and your outer belt. Generally, when it comes to the modern battle belt, you're going to get about 3 to 4 inches of play in there. And they have a pretty good sizing, guys, when it comes to the nicer companies. But definitely be aware, because you don't want to order a belt that's too big or too small and have to return it, or just be stuck with it and have to sell it on the open market. Next is an accessory that a lot of people run these days, and that is going to be a leg strap. Now, the reason you want a leg strap on a holster, especially if you're running a more low ride holster, is because as you draw your pistol, the holster tends to want to lean away from your body, making it more difficult to draw. So this leg strap is going to keep it attached to you a little bit better and allow a much smoother draw. Your agency may or may not allow that for you, but it's definitely a good option to fight for because it can help you draw the pistol a little cleaner, a little faster. And it also just gives you a nice area to stow your shot timer should you be using one out on the range. Next up is how you determine to outfit your belt, right? With the pouches specifically. I love the HSGI stuff. I like some of the G-code stuff. I like other brands like Wilder Tactical. The one thing I will advise you of when it comes to your magazine pouches, if you get ones that are fully polymer or Kydex, they are far more slippery than either blended or material ones like the HSGI stuff or the G-code stuff. It seems to be when you start running around and moving around, especially with a plate carrier or a chest rig on, that if you have a fully, poly style magazine pouch, that the magazines just want to start flying everywhere, even when you put an extreme amount of tension on them with the shot cord in there. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. If you're on a team and you're moving around a lot and doing drills, coming in and out of vehicles, that is a huge concern because you don't want your magazines or whatever's in your pouches flying all over the place, leaving the gypsy yard sale of tactical gear all the way up to your objective. Now, getting into holsters, we all know the big names in the industry, right? Safariland, Blackhawk, US Duty Gear, and many others are out there. Alien Gear, Compac. I've tried a ton of different holsters over the years. When it comes down to a holster, you want a good locking retention system so your gun just can't be ripped out of your holster. What I will say is avoid, for duty or security or military, obviously, just a friction fit holster. These are amazing for the range and to be super fast with, but they have nothing but friction retention. So that is not an optimal holster, to say the least, when it comes to a duty style rig. The next thing when it comes to retention is you don't want any style of retention holster that locks inside the trigger guard or outside the trigger guard. That's not the optimal way to do it, because as that holster's coming in and out, it's likely right there next to the trigger. There have been holsters like that out there designed in the past. They've mostly gone by the wayside, so you really want something that's gonna lock either on the breech area of the slide. There's ones out there like the Blackhawk that lock on the back end of the light if you run a light on there. And those are far more optimal retention systems when it comes to a holster. As far as your level of retention desire, that's gonna be up to you and your agency policy, whether it's level 2, level 3. But we've got several examples here that we'll talk about the different mechanisms and how they work. This is an Alien Gear holster, so this is a level 3 style. You have a hood to cover your optic, a hood to cover the pistol completely, and you have 2 different mechanisms to defeat. One is down for the optic hood, and then back is going to release the tension on the pistol so you can actually draw it out. These became pretty popular. They are extremely fast once you get that motion down. And overall, I've had a really good experience with these things. They are probably one of my more favorite holsters just because of the level of retention and speed in combination. Not every holster is like that when it comes to speed and retention. Generally, when you get to a level 3, it tends to slow you down just a little bit. Here is a Safariland. This is the ALS only system. So you have an optic hood and your ALS thumb brake attachment is here. The pistol locks inside there. It locks across the opening of the breech port area and allows you to just thumb brake it and draw the pistol. They do have higher level where you have an additional hood, which you push down and forward, then hit the ALS and then draw your pistol. Again, that will slow you down slightly, but it is far more secure. So instead of having 1 level of retention to defeat, you then have 2, which is a good thing as long as you are in practice and can draw that holster extremely fast. All right, next up is going to be the Blackhawk holster. Again, you can see we have a hood over the pistol, and then we have another lock inside, which actually locks right here behind the light itself. So some people like that, some people don't, because it's retaining on an item attached to the pistol rather than the pistol itself. Now, I've never had one of these fail me or fail that locking mechanism, and they are very quick. It's just a little bit different than a standard push down or pull back thumb design. This one, you squeeze in to draw the pistol. Overall, another very solid option out there in the market. You have some adjustable retention like all the others, and it is a fairly well-used holster out there in the industry. One last thing on the Blackhawk holster, even though it is a single operation to release the hood and the lock back there on the light, if you don't fully depress it, you're able to have the hood go down, but you can't draw the pistol. So you can defeat one mechanism without the other until you really have a good purchase on that button and draw that pistol. That's one thing of note to make sure that you are getting this action done completely correctly. It's also kind of almost making it a level 2 kind of safety and security measure, because if you only go halfway, just the hood comes down and then you can't draw the pistol until you fully depress that, which is a good thing as long as you are, again, in good practice with your chosen holster's locking mechanism. Next up is going to be the Compac holster. Now, Compac makes a lot of holsters for competition guys. In fact, I think it's like the #1 selling competition holster. Similar kind of design to the others. You have a straight down thumb action on the actual mechanism of release, and then it locks into 2 points. The hood is locked in, and then also it locks onto the top of the pistol, in this case a Walther PDP inside. Now, when you depress that thumb lever, it is defeating both locking mechanisms at the same time. So as long as you get that downward motion, you're going to be good to go for that pistol draw. It's not technically a level 3, but it is a level 3 since it has 2 different versions of locking mechanism, and some people fight over level 2 versus level 3. Again, a very good holster. It's very well made. It's extremely quick once you get that locking mechanism figured out and get your draw stroke figured out like all the others. It's just another really good option out there in the market from a very well respected US made company that it's actually the sister company of HSGI. Now, what all this really means is you've got your work cut out for you doing your research to figure out what belt you want, what pouches you want, what holster you want, what level of retention you want, and watch other people's videos as well. Watch different sources, watch competition guys, watch SWAT guys, watch military guys. See what kind of gear they're running and how it works out for them, how they have it set up, because everybody's gonna set their gear up very dependent and mission specific. If you're a patrol guy, you probably don't need some things that other guys in the military would carry on their belt, so don't overdo it. At the same time, be very specific with the gear you pick because you don't want to waste money and have to buy things twice. Make sure you guys get subscribed to the channel. Head over to ironinfidel.com, check out those battle bottles, those dagger and knot blades, all the fitness gear, and of course the swag. Who doesn't want a good shirt to run around on the range with? I'll see you guys out on the range.